Hey everybody, I'm with Debby K, and today we are out of Salt Lake City, Utah. Well, I'm in Dallas, of course. And my name is Teresa Kitchens, your host of the Power of Women in Insurance podcast. But I've got Debby, and she is a guru at workers' compensation insurance and really dug deep into this with her career. So today we're bringing you a little bit different always, because everybody's a little bit different conversation. But Debby, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great, Teresa. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am really excited, and you and I have met over LinkedIn, and you have, of course, that workers' compensation specialty, and we've had women on here who own agencies who have different specialties, but you are in a really cool specialty of specifically workers' comp, not just commercial insurance or just specifically working with a certain type of client, but you work in a certain type of insurance industry. So I would love to hear about your insurance journey and how you got where you are.
Oh, sure. I'm happy to share that. I started out in having restaurants. We sold the restaurant, and one of my friends had an agency and just said, Deb, you would be so good in this, because I love people. That's the part that I always love the most. And so I went into that, and he didn't take the time to train me. And so I found a mentor that I could learn from, and went to commercial and personal line school, and just love the commercial side of things, just the business. And I think because when we had our restaurants, I didn't really understand some of the stuff, like when they would say, how much do you do a year? What's your annual revenues? And it was not really explained that, hey, there's, a rate per thousand, and the busier you are, the more exposure we have. And so I felt that it was really important to help educate people on what they were getting and why. Because for us, it was just like, here's the check. And I didn't really, he went over things, but not in the same way. And so I felt that that was important to help educate people so they understood and put it in a way that made sense. So I started on that, and got involved in hospitality, contractors, transportation, and medical malpractice.
Wow.
And so through my career, I just had different opportunities, and I've never turned them down. I've thought about them and thought, is this something I can do? I'm going to have to roll up my sleeves. And I dove in and did that. And same with the workers' compensation. I've always done that I had a PEO company contact me, and they tried to recruit me. And I said, hey, I'm not interested in moving, but I'll oversee my book and yours. And so I got to dive into that and help with a lot of the risk management and claims and all that fun stuff.
So you really kind of got into all of it, like with the risk management, the claims. You've been looking at the restaurant. Do you have a certain area of workers' compensation that you really like, a certain industry within workers' comp? Do you really focus on contractors, or do you really focus on restaurants specifically?
Well, that's a great question. I would say definitely contractors. I work a lot in transportation, also with hospitals, doctors' offices, and restaurants still too. So, but I've tried
to use all that knowledge. Yeah,
and I've tried to narrow, because no one can ever be the best at everything. So you may be good at some things, but you're not going to be the best at everything. And so I've learned that through the years. I've sure tried to learn everything I could, but you realize as you're in, you'll never know it all. And there's always going to be people that are better at things. And so you want to keep those resources around and pick their brains and be able to gather that knowledge and share your knowledge with them as well.
Absolutely. Now, I from your intro, from your beginning, you mentioned that you joined in the insurance industry, but then you didn't have a whole lot of training, so you went out and you got it. And I think that's such a skill in and of itself. How did you decide to be able to go on out there and just grab the bull by the horns and just get the education that you needed? I mean, did people say, hey, here's like a onslaught of things you can do, certifications and education, or did you just kind of decide on your own on where and how to go, or did somebody guide you in that space? Because I think
Sure.
that makes people, when people start a job, especially in a new industry, they feel very lost and alone. And there's a lot of people that wouldn't step up and get themselves that education.
And I felt that way as well, especially because he was a friend. And then he just didn't have the time to take and didn't want to include me in on that. And so I went to the classes and found someone that was willing to train me and let me kind of be an apprentice so I could work on his stuff and ask him every question in the book. And when I was in commercial line school, I had a company try to recruit me. And I just said, I'm new, you're new. And so you can't teach me anything. So for me to become good, I've got to be around someone that knows what they're doing. And I've got to surround myself with that knowledge. And you don't have it, I don't have it. So
Right.
that's not going to be a good mix. Career wise, that probably would have been better money wise, but not. I didn't get in to just be okay or average. I wanted to be able to do a good job for people.
Yeah.
And the care was already there, but you've got to do your work to become a professional, and that never happens overnight. So I didn't really know what to do, but I met this other agent and started attending different classes and went to all the life and health classes and all the commercial carrier classes. And honestly, it wouldn't be something I would recommend because it was too much information in too many areas. And so I've pretty much stayed in the commercial arena most of my career. So, and not that I haven't worked alongside other people, but I'm not going to be the guru that they are. There's only so many hours in a day. And I really like the commercial side. I always have. And so luckily I had a good mentor to help with that. And so I got a chance to learn about contracts and different things. And one of my clients had 25 attorneys on staff.
Wow.
And so I got to work with them on all the contracts, and that increased that knowledge. And so I've worked with some franchises that they send me leases and contracts. And I'm like, I'm not an attorney, but on the insurance side, there's some things that you can do to protect yourself. Let me work with the attorney to make sure that we've got you protected as much as we can. And so it's just kind of gone from there. Opportunities have presented themselves because I've been willing to do that work. So
So how do you, I think people get a lot of anxiety about approaching people though and asking for that assistance or that help, right? I mean, I know that you say that you had certain opportunities that came to you, but I think also probably you let yourself be available for those opportunities. It wasn't just that these things magically fell from the sky. I mean, some things do in life, but most things you have to make yourself known to people that you're willing to learn, right? Like maybe a group of attorneys, right? You want to learn about those contracts, maybe ask questions, those types of things. So many people have a hard time speaking up and asking questions. And I think sometimes women in general can also think that maybe we're being in a position or we shouldn't step up and be able to ask those questions. How did you kind of get into that pattern or that feel of your career to really being able to ask for what you need so that way you got it?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Luckily, I'm so curious and I want to know everything I can know, and I wanted to plug into other people's brains. And so I'm just very inquisitive. And so I would take the classes, ask the teachers, talk with the underwriters and say, explain this in a way that I can explain it to clients. Because I get the insurance verbiage, but I want to make it where they understand what we're saying. And so luckily I wasn't shy about asking those questions. And I think as you're in longer, you become better at asking what you want to know. Otherwise, you never learn. And but I was always open for people to ask me. When I put together a transportation program, I wasn't the person that they really wanted to work with. His brother-in-law didn't like the segment, and he's like, I hate this, Deb. and he would refer them to me in other states. And so I started working with them and did really good, but I would pick their brain on every call. What are you doing? What's so challenging? And moving forward, I just said, hey, I really like this. I'm doing well with it. I want to put together a package. Do you want in with me? Or, and he's like, nope, you go do that. But I spent years researching and calls and classes and then and it was for the pilot car industry, which there's no ISO class code. And so I worked with a lot of states on contract law and trying to help make things, because like the language is very general.
Mhm.
So really just trying to help pin them down on what they meant by their verbiage. Because I'm like, well, it's open to interpretation. So what is it you want and why? And so I guess due to that, my friend took me all over and I got a chance to learn a lot of things and do a lot of things because I was just willing to do the work. Nobody paid me to do this extra stuff or schooling but I was interested. And so I just kept gathering data and learning all I could. So
I think that's the way we have to do it though, right? I love your term that you're very curious. You're a very curious person. So you asked the questions, you went the extra mile. Maybe you looked up additional continuing education opportunities, right? Maybe you said, and I love the fact that you asked, tell me what words the client would probably be able to, how can I explain this to the client? And the words in which would be maybe a little bit more understandable to them based on what it is that they're doing for a living. Because I do think that as insurance professionals, we have that responsibility to connect and to grow our clients in the insurance space. We're protecting their businesses, we're protecting their lives, their careers, their employees, we're protecting their livelihoods, right? And I think it's our responsibility to be able to do so. Did you get any pushback from anybody about maybe the level of education you were trying to get, or maybe, the questions that maybe were like, why do you ask all these questions? I mean, I would be, to some degree, I'm really terrified about asking a lot of questions, but at the same point, I'm a fairly inquisitive person too. So how did you, what type of response?
There were times that I would get pushback, or maybe they didn't want to answer and they would close off. And so I'd find another resource. So, because I'm like, well, if you're not going to tell me, then I need to learn. And so how am I going to learn what I need to? So I would always set out with those people that I could ask them questions and that were open to teaching me. And then always in my career, I've been somebody that they can trust. So those conversations that we have, they always stay between us unless they say, hey, Deb, what, you can share this or that. And so I've always just kind of kept things to myself and learned what I could. And so they always knew that I was coming from a place that hopefully they could trust, and they were more willing to talk to me. And if they'd say, well, what does this person say, or what happened with them? And I was like, you'll have to call them. That's not my business, that's theirs. And so I think that being trustworthy also allowed people to open up and just share different stories. But luckily it didn't deter me to find out what I wanted to know. And when people are like, you can't do that, that's impossible. And I was like, really, watch me. Don't tell me I can't do that. So, and I don't know why. There's times I wished I wasn't so much that way, but I think if it's something you're passionate about and you really feel like you can help this industry and be of service, then you go for it.
Right. Completely. So what were some things that you looked for in people that you asked questions to? So for maybe mentors or people that you were able to really bond with, maybe even go back to them on a repetitive basis about picking their brains about different things that you were curious about. What types of qualities in that person did you look for that told you that you were safe to be able to ask those questions?
Sure. And it was probably more of forming some sort of relationship with them, that I wanted to know what they're about,
Yep.
and have them have an understanding of who I was, and that I was really interested in learning the ins and outs of what they were doing and why, and what my purpose was. And so I was just very upfront about things. I don't believe in kind of beating around the bush. It's like, here's what I'm looking at. And so I was just very upfront about things. So,
I
and
love
luckily
that.
people talk to me, and maybe big trucking companies on their contracts, I would say, hey, I don't, your contract is kind of crazy. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, there's no protection for the trucker in here. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how to protect them. You're protecting yourself, but not them. And so I don't know, I'm pretty upfront. And so I would just ask what I wanted to know. And that would start a lot of conversations that we would just discuss things, because I come from a point of wanting to help. And it's like, I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, but you're not doing any favors to those people. They think they're protected, and they're really
True.
not.
It's true.
So
True.
that drove me as well, is to really just help educate and help protect people.
I love it. So did you ever have to have that conversation then with the client about the contract, that maybe they weren't protected in certain ways, and maybe to go back and ask for different things maybe in a contract that would be able to protect them? I mean, we're not lawyers, we're not those people to be able to
Oh,
say that.
yeah.
But maybe just saying, hey, I'm not seeing that. Could you just clarify that there's, that this is not there? And because I think to some degree we see enough of that, the consistency. It's not ours to consult on the actual
Mhm.
contract in a complete way, but just to say, hey, I'm not seeing coverage for this. Could you check, make sure it's there? Have you been able to help your clients in that way?
I have, and so I would go back to like the trucking companies there and say, talk to me about what exactly this covers, because this is your contract. And I'm just trying to help them make sure that we've got them protected. So tell me what this means. So I would just ask them up front, and because I'm like, I can't tell them when it's not my contract. But yeah, I'm blow the whistle, and I'm like, hey, this is, they shouldn't be asking you for this. And here's why. And I always tell, I'm not an attorney, but on the insurance verbiage, if they're committing you to something and you're signing on it, then you're not being protected. And so let's look at those contracts, let's pull them out. And so that's something that I do with the people that I work with. And even other agents may call me and say, hey, Deb, I'm working on this and I see X, Y, and Z. Is that normal? And I may say, yes or no. But I've had, it seems like, the bigger companies, they write one contract and it covers a lot of specialties and not just one. And
Mm,
so I'll say, let's clarify. This looks like this is for somebody maybe hauling gas and you're not. So let's clarify what's in the
yeah.
contract, because why should you have to pay for coverage that doesn't apply to you?
I
And
think that's
so
so true. So many contracts, they're just boilerplate and they just stick them on every single situation. And they're not applicable for every single type of job.
yeah. And so I have clients sometimes that do get mad. Well, Dad, why do you have to always read that? And
Well, you got
like,
to read the contract, Tab.
yeah, we just signed it. But it's like, I'm trying to help protect you. And once you sign on there, you're going to have these coverages, and you can't go back and negotiate maybe your $5 million umbrella. Maybe they'll take less. And so it's all in terms of trying to help. But yeah, it does get me in some hot water, that not everyone's always happy. And most recently I working on one, and they were telling me that, well, thousands of other agents do this. And I'm like, that's great, but this coverage doesn't apply. It's not legal to do. And I
Right.
know, because I've talked to Progressive's underwriter and their managers, and I've made 5 calls in, and they've assured me that this cannot be done. And so I'm like, go back to your attorneys and let them know legally this cannot be done. And so it's not protecting you guys either. And so I just try and open up those conversations because I want to help. I want to be transparent, and but we can only do so much. So
That's so true. So true. Sometimes people just think we're supposed to be able to just, stick a policy together and, with Band-Aids or whatever and just make it work, and we can't do that as professionals, to be able to take care of them. We're not on The Price is Right. Just give me the one that's, behind door number 2. And as long as it works, we're good. That's not being a professional in the insurance industry. And I think a lot of people don't, especially when they're in other industries, they just don't get it. All they got to do is just make sure they get that requirement made so they can go do their job, right? And they don't even think about it. They don't think about the dangers to them either.
no, they don't. And so and I'm sure you try and do the same as far as help educate them on what you bring to the table, because we spent a lot of years learning insurance, and it's not, anyone can go online, but you're not going to have that same knowledge and someone to say, okay, if you're looking at doing this and this, here's what I've seen happen. Here's some of the claims that come up. And so is that risk that you're willing to take? And so you become more of an advisor, and it's a close relationship for sure. So.
Right. I love it. I love it. So as far as like where you've gotten some education, I know there's lots of different ways to do it. Is there a methodology or a way that you love to be able to, I know that it's always fun to be able to go take a class like at a specific location, to be able to kind of get away from the phones ringing and things like that. But today's day and age, post-COVID, a lot of people are doing online education. Do you feel like that's as in depth or as I don't really know what I'm thinking, what I'm trying to get to specifically, but sometimes I wonder that virtual education, we're still just really distracted. We're on our computers. We still get the little pop-ups, so the notifications. Whereas if I'm in a classroom, I'm totally there. Have you found that? Have you done a whole lot of things in the past year or so as far as education goes that you prefer one or the other?
Yeah, and I agree with you as far as taking the classes. I think if you're not there, you do have a lot of distractions. And so I get a lot more out of being in a class physically, even though I do listen to a lot of online classes and sit in. When I'm really working on something, I want to sit in live and be able to do that, which can be challenging because, for many years, I've been commission only. And so if you're not selling, you're not eating.
Yeah, that's true.
So you've really gotta pick where you put that time and energy into. And one of my goals now is to work on my CIC and do some other things. But yeah, you've got to plan for all of that unless you've got someone just writing you checks. So, which I don't think happens as much anymore.
I agree with you on that. And I feel like maybe the fact that so many people have gone commission only in the concept of, especially once they get to a certain level in their career, they can make more money that way. They can do different things, maybe have a little bit more ownership over their career by being able to do that. Do you feel like people still pursue the same level of education when they do that? Because that would be kind of scary, because a lot of these education, especially the higher level, you take like a week off, right? And you've got to be in that class. But it's not just like 1 or 2 days.
Oh yeah. And I think that the people that work for companies, typically in reps, those people seem to have the most education because they're on a salary. They're not getting paid commissions. Yeah, you can't keep disappearing and getting everything done. And so I think it makes it more challenging to have those designations, but I think the education's important as well. And so it's a balance.
It's crucial. It's crucial. We have to focus on that education. So I know here that you have your certified advisor workers compensation. You said that you want to be able to do more, but you still ask questions just to people in your lives, people that you interact with, and other things. So I know that that still gives you a lot of that extra education, even the classrooms don't even give you, and that might even honestly be a little bit more, moment to moment. That gives you a little bit more of like situational in the moment education too. So I think it is the combination of all of that that really makes being able to be in the insurance space so important.
No, I agree with you. And a lot of it is that you have to take the ownership for your
Yeah.
own knowledge and education. Otherwise, you're never going to be as good as you could be and do the job, you're able to do for others. So, but I think a lot of that depends on your drive and how you view it. So some
Completely.
people just think, hey, I got a license, and I'm like, you know nothing. You're just beginning. Your
Yeah.
learning is just beginning. And so I think the longer you're in, the more you know what we don't know. And there's so much that none of us will ever know. So you
Yeah.
want to be surrounded by great people you can trust that are willing to sit down and give you their time and help educate you and answer questions. And so I think that it's important to find those mentors that you can reach out to and can trust, of course, because sometimes you might reach out and they're like, oh, hey, you're working on this. Oh, maybe I'll go in and work on that. And so find the ones that you truly can trust, and you help them with their stuff, and if they let you, if they allow that, and vice versa. So, because I think that's the only way you learn. So,
Completely. Completely. And we have to take responsibility, I think, for our own learning too. We have to be able to step up and say, I want to do these things. And have you ever found that you have needed to change your environment a little bit in order to be able to get that additional education that you were really looking for? Because I know maybe certain businesses or jobs might give certain allotments for being able to get different certifications or different education pieces. But if you changed positions to get the education to grow in that way, because I think that's really important. Is sometimes we also need to understand that growing means sometimes we need a little bit of a transition, maybe in our personal environment.
definitely. And I think, we all have to take responsibility for that, because there have been times, and though you're always being educated in what you're working in, you're working with underwriters, you're always doing research or reading, but there you may work in an organization that isn't big on education. And they're like, hey, just sell, don't worry what you know, just sell. And that's great, because you've got to keep going,
Yeah.
but you still have to learn, and you have to realize that you don't know, I guess, what you know and what you don't know, and you've got to take responsibility and make a plan. Because a lot of organizations won't say, hey, you need to do this, and this, and go to this class. That's going to be, a lot of that's going to be on the agent. So
Your own, personal responsibility to be able to do that. And I think that's something that we need to really encourage in not only myself and where I am in my career, but then also my team members, that work with me. Is I think we get so busy in that day to day trying to pop out work and service work and being able to do sales and do all these things, that we don't take that time to be able to really promote our own personal growth in the insurance industry. I think that's awesome.
yeah, it's a challenge for sure, for all of us. So
Yes. Yes. And then balancing work and family and things and life and, just all those other things also is a totally different situation. So, trying to
true,
find the right time to get them all done.
very true.
So Debbie, if you could say anything to the insurance ladies out there in the industry, what one piece of advice would you love to be able to pass along?
I would pass along that it's a great industry, but find the right fit for you, that's going to be able to offer you all the things that you're looking for in your career. Don't feel like you have to just take anything that comes along. Go for what you want, make your plan, find those great mentors and go for it. Yeah, don't just think you're going to have to take whatever kind of comes along and go that way. Make your plan and for a year, for 5 years, and your goals, and go for them. Even if people tell you, hey, it's probably not going to happen. If you want to make it happen, you can, but it's going to take some grit, and maybe everyone's going to think you're nuts, but go for what you really, what's in your heart and what you feel. But I think surround yourself with great people as well. So
I totally agree. And make the choices that get you where you need to go. I love it. I love it. Well, Debby, if people want to reach out to you, how would you recommend that they do that? Because if they have questions for you, how would you like for them to reach out to you?
Oh, sure. They can call me on my cell phone at 801-455-1044, or they can send me an email, Debby, Debby Kallinikos @usi.com.
Perfect.
And I'm happy to answer any questions or share any insights. So if there's anything that's needed, maybe somebody's really struggling. Do I stay in the industry? And we've all been there. Anyone that's been around for any amount of time, they're like, what am I doing in this crazy industry? And so sometimes you just need somebody to bounce something off and say, maybe I'm not on the right path. Talk to me, tell me what I'm missing. But I'm very open, and so would be happy to speak to anyone that needs some help or guidance. So
I love it. That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, Debby, thank you so much for being a guest today on the Power of Women in Insurance podcast. We do release another episode every single Wednesday. So everybody, make sure that you check us out on Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to all your favorite podcasts. And everybody, thank you so much, Debby. You've been amazing. And everybody, we'll catch you on the flip side next week. Have a great day.
Can I give you a little plug for your podcast? As I want to encourage everybody to go through and listen to past podcasts like I did. There's phenomenal women on there. In fact, I'm reaching out as well because we've got to be connected to each other. Yeah. So I'm going to encourage you guys to follow Teresa, listen to all of her podcasts as I have, and reach out to those people that you're listening to that you feel drawn to. So,
yes.
So thank you for all that you're doing as well, Teresa. You're awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I agree. Let's create a community, right, of women who support women across the country. I think that's awesome. Thank you so much. Well, everybody, Debby's awesome. If you do have any questions, reach on out, and we will definitely have her on again and talk a little bit more about insurance. All right. Everybody, have a wonderful week.
Thank you.